Tracy Sable tonight on EWTN News Nightly. Back and forth. President Joe Biden continues to criticize the pro-life stance of Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville. We're at the White House. Mutual respect. The Holy See strengthens its relationship with a Southeast Asian nation. Demanding change. New developments in the military coup in Niger, including what a Catholic priest is saying. And almost ready. A preview of what's in store for World Youth Day next week in Lisbon, Portugal. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, in a speech today on the economy, President Joe Biden says people are coming off the sidelines, adding that unemployment and inflation are down. Meanwhile, he continues to go after a pro-life lawmaker from Alabama who is blocking Pentagon promotions to defend the unborn. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Tracy, President Joe Biden spoke at Auburn Manufacturing in Auburn, Maine today, touting the economy, reminding his audience inflation numbers are improving. He even joked that maybe Republicans will now decide to impeach him with inflation numbers coming down. President Joe Biden departs the White House, not stopping to talk to reporters amidst the noise of Marine One.
Mr. President, are you worried about being impeached?
Last night, the president did make remarks about abortion. He wants the U.S. military to pay for troops who travel to get abortions. But Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville takes a pro-life stand, blocking Pentagon promotions until that policy is reversed.
All because one senator from Alabama and 48 Republicans refused to stand up to him to lift a blockade over the Pentagon policy offering servicemen and women their families access to reproductive health care rights they deserve if they're stationed in states to deny it.
Senator Tuberville responds, there is ample bipartisan precedent for what I am doing to block the Pentagon's abortion policy, including from the very Democrat senators complaining the loudest. And today, Vice President Kamala Harris takes the administration's pro-abortion message to Iowa.
And so when we think about this issue, there are so many layers to it that are about a violation of basic freedoms and rights.
Pro-life groups push back. Live Action recently tweeted, procedures that intentionally kill human beings have no place in the healthcare system, adding, it's time to abolish abortion. President Biden also defends his economic record during a trip to Maine.
So inflation is now at its lowest point in 2 years.
Today, the White House hosted a group of Democratic lawmakers who agreed to spread the president's economic message. But we asked how they explain higher grocery and gas prices.
Nobody's gaslighting the American people. The American people are smart and decent people. And if they have the facts, they're going to make the same conclusion that I have made, that our policies are working for the American people.
President Biden is expected to end his day in Delaware, where he'll begin his vacation. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump has been indicted on 3 additional charges in a case that accuses him of illegally possessing classified documents. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Our Congress has closed up shop for the rest of the summer, while funding the government come October is a top priority. Abortion continues to be front and center, and it is only going to heat up in the fall. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has that story. Eric?
Good evening, Tracy. There is a stark contrast at work. Spending bills passed by the House recently do contain pro-life protections. Meanwhile, over in the Senate, pro-life measures are off limits, and that's setting up a battle in the fall on the final version of the National Defense Authorization Act.
And when it goes to conference, we need to insist on it, and we sit until we get those provisions back in. And they have pretty much taken the reallocated money where it shouldn't be. And the social issues are important, and hopefully we get them back in.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy blames Democrats for making abortion an issue in the spending bills by breaking long-standing policy.
When people have different positions, be it pro-life or pro-choice, on the Hyde Amendment, that has been for 4 decades, that regardless of how you feel on this position, you shouldn't use taxpayer money for it. When the Democrats took all majority, for some reason, they wiped away 40 years of something they've been voting for.
But Democrats accuse Republicans of dividing the country.
Extreme MAGA Republicans have hijacked every single one of these appropriations bills that it is our responsibility to pass in order to march toward a nationwide ban on abortion.
Support for pro-life protections remains strong among Senate Republicans.
We will be supporting the House 100%. That provision likely won't be in the Senate, and if we had a vote on it in the Senate, we would lose it, unfortunately. But that's why we have elections. We need to win some more elections and get more pro-life candidates elected to office.
But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says House bills with pro-life protections are poison pills.
The House ought to look to the bipartisan Senate as to how to get things done, instead of just throwing out partisan bills that have no chance of passing.
Congress returns after Labor Day, setting up only about 3 weeks to pass spending bills by October 1st or face a government shutdown. The stakes are high, and both sides say that they are not budging. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has signed new legislation targeting pro-life pregnancy centers. The measure says the centers could face penalties if they distribute what the government calls false or untruthful information. The Thomas More Society has filed a lawsuit on behalf of the pro-lifers. Vietnam has officially agreed to let the Vatican appoint a permanent resident representative to the Southeast Asian nation. The accord falls short of full diplomatic relations. The Holy See welcomed the news, saying that it will serve as a bridge between the countries. Pope Francis says that he is praying for those affected by wildfires in Greece and Italy. In 2 telegrams today, the Holy Father says that he is deeply concerned about the life-threatening blazes and is asking for special prayers for firefighters and other emergency personnel. While the final preparations are underway for the 37th World Youth Day starting Monday in Portugal, the event is expected to include more than 300,000 young people from 200 countries around the world. The Pilgrims will welcome Pope Francis on August 2nd, and this will be the Holy Father's 42nd apostolic journey and his second trip to Portugal after visiting Fatima in 2017. EWTN News Vatican Correspondent Colm Flynn joins us now. Colm, so great to see you. I understand that you are fronting EWTN's coverage of World Youth Day along with Father Mark, Mary, Christina. Can you give us maybe a little glimpse of the behind the scenes and the preparations that have been going on?
I can indeed. Very good evening, Tracy, and good to see you. Well, most of the crew are either there now in Lisbon or en route. And in total, EWTN will have around 80 people, Tracy, across our TV, radio and print in multiple different languages. So this is going to be a huge team effort to bring you live coverage of the biggest Catholic youth event in the world on your TV screens, your phones, your radios. The crew include journalists from EWTN News, camera operators, technicians, makeup artists, lighting, and so on. Some of the equipment being hired locally, much of it being brought. Some of the broadcasts will be in partnership with RTP, the national broadcaster of Portugal. But overall, Tracy, we are just so excited to be there for the week in the heart of Lisbon and bringing you all the coverage. I fly out tomorrow, and we're going to be filming across the weekend, just showing the kind of the frantic last-minute finishing touches that are being put to the event by all the organisers and the volunteers.
I know it's going to be so exciting. I'm curious, Colm, what about you? I mean, what are you planning to cover specifically on the ground?
Well, I'll be anchoring much of the coverage along with Father Mark, Mary, Christina, as you mentioned, and as well as covering all the main papal events, like, of course, Pope Francis arriving on Wednesday the 2nd, meeting the President. We'll film him all the major events in his schedule, like the Way of the Cross on Friday, his visit to Fatima on Saturday, the final Mass, which will be beautiful, on Sunday with all the young people. But also, apart from the Holy Father's schedule, we'll be bringing you a taste of Lisbon, that beautiful ancient European city. I'm talking about the atmosphere, the people, the places, the faces, and most importantly, Tracy, of course, all the hundreds of thousands of young people from across the world. We'll be right in the crowd, chatting to people, hearing their stories, and witnessing firsthand just how powerful an event like World Youth Day can be.
It's going to be beautiful. And I know this is your first World Youth Day. What are you looking forward to, Colm?
Yeah, and this is my first one, Tracy, and what a way to kind of dive into it then, hosting the coverage for EWTN. And really what I'm looking forward to the most, apart from meeting all the young people from across the church, is sitting with my co-host, Father Mark Mary Christina, who the EWTN viewers will be familiar with him from shows like Life on the Rock and others. But he is such a fountain of knowledge, and he has great deep insights into the church and theology. Talking to him, Dr. Matthew Bunson and all the great contributors, going deeper about the messages and the meaning behind an event like World Youth Day. I think that's going to be really exciting. And of course then to see the Holy Father, Pope Francis, interact with all the young people who come from every corner of the globe, I think that is really going to be incredible, Tracy.
Indeed, and the coverage is going to be great. I know you're going to do so great. And Colm, before I let you go, can you remind us how people can watch?
Yes, of course, Tracy. There are loads of different ways you can follow the coverage. The best is if you go to EWTN social media across Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And we have a designated website, EWTN.com/WYD, World Youth Day. And by the way, Tracy, finally, if you know someone who is going, if you are going, if your kids are going, be sure to look for the EWTN crew. And we have hundreds of these really cool EWTN sunglasses. I don't know if you can see, but it says EWTN News, and you will look the part there at World Youth Day.
Oh, you are looking good, Colm, looking good. Everybody's going to want some of those sunglasses, and I do too, so make sure I get some as well. Colm, great to be with you. Looking forward to the coverage, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Talk to you Monday.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including a Catholic response. Hear from the author of a new book on how the faithful can respond to wokeness and other secular beliefs. And the latest on the military coup in Niger, what the leader of the rebellion has to say. Soldiers leading the mutiny in Niger have declared a new head of state.
Nigériens, mes chers compatriotes.
The military says the country's new leader is the general who led the rebellion earlier this week. He says he wants to tackle the economy, human rights, and social governance. A Catholic priest currently residing in the area reports calm in the streets since the coup took place. He also says the takeover was meant to stop President Bazoum from destabilizing the country. Well, back here in the U.S., a new book examines ways the faithful can and should respond to wokeness and other dominant secular and political beliefs. In Evangelization and Ideology, author Matthew Petrusek shows how Catholic social teaching can provide a rational and moral alternative to the secular political beliefs that we see today. It also examines how the church should handle the political arena. And joining me now is Matthew Petrusek, Assistant Director of the Word on Fire Institute and author of the new book, Evangelization and Ideology, How to Understand and Respond to the Political Culture. Matthew, first off, congratulations on the new book, and thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, first up, I want to ask you, what prompted you to write this book?
A few things. One is actually somewhat personal in nature. I spent 10 years in academia as a assistant and then associate tenured professor. And it was an environment that is rightly caricatured as being extremely woke and everything that means. So I sat there for 10 years in faculty meetings and listening to papers and having all these thoughts of the things I would just love to say if I had the opportunity to say them. And so this book and thankfully Word on Fire, the Word on Fire Institute, has given me the opportunity to give a formal response. More broadly, this is really I intend it to be a toolbox, a guide for Catholics and for all those who seek a sort of a calmer, more rational approach to understanding politics, to how to navigate our hyper political, ideological, cultural framework that we're all operating in right now. So I intended to give tools to help just deal with these barrage of claims that we get, like love is love and a man can be a woman and the different meanings of social justice. And the third is I really intend it to be a tool for evangelization. I think we're understandably oftentimes hesitant to enter into politics as we're hesitant to enter into the religious arena. But showing the richness of the Catholic intellectual tradition, the Catholic social thought tradition, can actually be a bridge into reaching people who want nothing to do with religion, but are quite interested in politics. And so we can show how the Catholic tradition has these resources that can answer these questions. Perhaps they can answer the deeper existential questions as well.
Yeah, and Matthew, I know that you advise against aligning with any of the four political ideologies. That said, on a practical level, how can we as Catholics, how can we adhere to, our beliefs while also exercising our civic duties, especially in this deeply divided culture right now?
Yeah, that's frankly a very, very difficult question, especially because it's so contextual and it depends, do you live in a blue state? Do you live in a red state? Do you live in a blue pocket in a red state, a red pocket in a blue state? So much of it depends upon your particular political milieu. One thing that the book really emphasizes is that there is a good answer to every question that the political arena can throw at us. So the first thing to keep in mind is that we don't have to abandon the natural law tradition. We don't have to abandon the Catholic intellectual tradition. We certainly don't have to abandon our personal practice of the faith in order to maintain a sort of a solid core within this storm that's going around us politically. So then it becomes a question of practically, how do I deal with it in my place of work? How do I deal with relatives who are being hostile to me? And the book gives resources for all those different kinds of scenarios.
I'm curious, have you received any type of feedback? And if so, what has it been? Has there been any blowback at all to the book?
There has. Before releasing the book, I did a lecture series based on some of the similar themes, particularly on progressive wokist ideology. It's on the Word on Fire Institute YouTube channel. And there was all the blowback that I expected would take place. So part of the strategy of dealing with our current political climate is just having thick skin and knowing that speaking obvious truths, things that are empirically true, things are philosophically true, things are commonsensically true, is going to make you a target. And so if you recognize that ahead of time, it's easier just to say, well, that's just the way it is, and here's why, and know that it's not going to be comfortable, but you can still have a clean conscience.
And before I let you go, Matthew, quickly, where can people find the book?
It's available at wordonfire.org under books, and you can also get it on Amazon as well.
Wonderful. Great to be with you, and congratulations again on the book. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, back in the news, a Catholic response to the possibility of the existence of UFOs. Plus, a young adult group makes a holy pit stop on its way to World Youth Day. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill recently took a look at the possibility of whether extraterrestrial life exists, and if so, does it pose a threat to national security? And while that debate will continue, we ask, what does the Catholic Church say about UFOs? And for that answer, we go now to Father Thomas Petri, president of the Pontifical Faculty of the Immaculate Conception. Father Petri, always so great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. First off, I'm curious, what was your reaction when you heard lawmakers were looking into this topic? And, what did you think of the information that was brought forth by the whistleblowers?
Well, of course, it's interesting that this is getting so much attention and is being talked a lot about now. And I'm somewhat incredulous that there's some big cover-up or secret. I can't imagine the U.S. government being capable of maintaining such a vast secret or conspiracy, quite honestly, especially in an era such as ours when there's so much social media and so much leakers and people with access to all sorts of information. As regards the things that are being said on Capitol Hill and in congressional testimony, I think it's important to say that all of it still sounds very vague. There's a lot of jargon, a lot of language, and there still is no definitive proof of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Yeah, and this, Father, really can be kind of hard to wrap your mind around it. That said, what does the Church teach about the existence of extraterrestrial life?
Well, the Church has no real official teaching on it because there's nothing revealed about it, right? I mean, when it comes to intelligent and extraterrestrial life in Scripture and tradition, we're basically talking about the angels, or the demons. So that God, because there's no experience of it, it's not part of Revelation. Now, there are theological principles we could apply should extraterrestrial life be discovered or make contact. And there could be legitimate disputes. And what is their status? Would they be fallen? And some might suggest that yes, they would be fallen creatures because humanity is made in the image of God, and we are fallen. And St. Paul says in the letter to the Romans that all of creation is fallen because we are fallen. Others might suggest, also theologically possible, that other intelligent creatures, of extraterrestrial intelligent creatures, could in fact not be fallen because original sin is passed through propagation in the human species. There's a third possibility that might be disturbing, but I think is something we should keep in mind, is that whatever these phenomena are, and until there is real definitive proof that they are natural extraterrestrial creatures, and as I say, there's nothing to suggest that now, it might also be, and St. Paul talks about this, the book of Revelation talks about this, St. Paul talks about it in the letter to the Thessalonians. Some of these phenomena could in fact be false signs and false wonders worked by Satan to lure people away from the truth with a sort of an awe and a wonder. That is also a legitimate theological possibility. So there's no definitive dogmatic or doctrine on it, but we can use theological principles that the church does teach, but still not really come to any definitive conclusions. But I would always caution or emphasize caution in hearing these things or rushing to believe or to think that they're good or evil or that they're in fact natural. They could in fact be supernatural as well.
Yeah, a lot to think about right there, kind of more questions than answers right now. The official confirmation of alien life, if it were to happen, would really have enormous implications for our society. Father Petri, how do you think the Catholic Church should respond if that happens? I know that's sort of putting the cart before the horse, but what do you think?
Well, I think initially, obviously, just thinking about how we've responded in the past, certainly on this world, and in human history, when we've discovered, ethnic peoples or native, we haven't always responded well, just as a culture, as a society. The church has a mixed history with that, but generally has always come around to emphasizing the dignity of all members of the human species. Now, intelligence is one of the aspects that we know makes us in the image of God. That is church teaching. So if there are, in fact, other intelligent life forms outside of in the universe, and once again, I'm not sure that there are. In fact, I'm more certain that there probably aren't. Then, in fact, the church would want to evangelize and come to understand their culture and their society, but certainly evangelizing and help them to know God and help them to know Jesus Christ, which some might find, strange or weird. But Jesus Christ is the universal Savior. He is the universal Logos, and he is the goal and the pattern of all of creation.
And we're going to leave it right there. Father Petri, always so great to be with you. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thanks, Tracy.
Finally tonight, a group of young adult Catholic pilgrims made an unusual pit stop on the way to World Youth Day. The group from Mexico was stopping in Rome on its way to World Youth Day when the group's leader invited Pope Francis to join them for Mass. In response, the Holy Father issued a personal invitation to meet with the group at the Vatican. The Holy Father spent about 25 minutes with the young adults. One woman said the meeting was like, quote, talking to a friend. We thank you for watching tonight, and remember you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.